So let's begin with the President, Akufo-Addo. This afternoon, he has cautioned members of the just announced 60th anniversary committee to be modest in the celebration, taking into account the burden on the economy. Speaking at the Flagstaff House a while ago, the President said celebrations should be in the interest of unity and oneness of the country. The second committee will focus on national awards. Shortly after President Akufo-Addo announced this, okay, we can take a listen to what the President has been saying.
On such an occasion, it is fitting and proper that also the nation recognizes and commemorates the work of some of its citizens, those who have distinguished themselves, those who have contributed to bringing us to where we are today, and that fitting honor is accorded those to whom honor is due. And in order for that to happen, I think once again we should have a group of people who will plan it, liaise, of course, with the statutory body, the Office of Honors, to be able then to put before us Ghanaians who are worthy of honor on that day. There will be the 60th Independence Anniversary Awards Committee. I've chosen half a dozen people to constitute the committee. 3 of them are very distinguished academics. One who head the committee is Professor Yao Chumesi, a very famous political scientist, generation of people who were fully awake at the time of independence, remember it and remember the actors. Therefore, are in a position to give a balanced account of who should be honored and promoted. There's a very famous historian at Legon, the University of Ghana, Professor Irene Odote, will be a member of the committee. And then the man who's been a really major figure on our cultural landscape and is the sort of institutional memory of everything that has gone on in our country in terms of music, in terms of art, Professor J.H. Nketia will be a member. Audrey Gajipo, a well-known communicator, is a member. The traditional element is provided by the Tumukuro. And then, because on these matters too, there should always be a lawyer somewhere. Kwekwe Sifi is the person whom I'm asking to be a member of the committee. So these are the people that have been selected. There's another committee that will be outdoors soon, but that has to do with national awards generally, on which people like Elizabeth Ohene and Abna and Seje and the others will be a member. But that will be outdoors at the appropriate moment. But for today, it is these 2 committees that have been constituted in my office who are going to undertake the tasks that I've outlined to you today. So, thank all of you very much for coming. And I am sure that the committee will be giving you periodic briefings on how their work is going and its incidents. Thank you.
So shortly after President Akufo-Addo announced the committee, the Vice Chairman Abu Jinapor informed the press that the team was prepared to deliver a celebration that will exceed people's expectations.
I think that undoubtedly we all acknowledge that the financial and economic situation in our country is in dire straits and that the treasury of our country is challenged. The President has set the tone that we're going to have a celebration which is elegant, a celebration which, in his view, will be worthy of our status as a country, but at the same time, we cannot be oblivious of the circumstances of our country, of the financial circumstances of our country, and therefore he's entrusted his confidence in Chairman Amankwa to prosecute a celebration in a manner that will uplift the image of this country, but in a manner that is also mindful and cognizant of the financial situation of our country.
Is this the best use of our resources? Knowing very well that I'm asking, is this the best use of our resources? If we have a celebration like always
celebration, we have to celebrate, but the kind and nature of the celebration is what is important, and that is the tone that the president has set, and that tone is the fact that we're going to celebrate because 60 years is not mean an achievement. Secondly, that we have a lot to celebrate for, and you heard him. We had a democratic experiment in this country since 1993, today 24 years. The Ghanaian people have chalked a lot of successes, but we're going to be mindful of the financial situation of our country. We're also going to conduct our affairs in a very intelligent manner when it comes to these financial matters. We're going to find ways of raising money other than taking it from the public purse and fund these celebrations from other sources of funding, as opposed to taking the money from the public purse. So you're going to see a different kind of celebrations. You're going to see an attitude who takes into account the financial circumstances of our country. When, by the grace of God, the president leads us into better times, I'm sure on other occasions we will celebrate and celebrate in a manner that will be befitting of our status as a country.
An idea of a budget?
Not yet.
Aside getting soliciting funds, what are the details of your function as a committee?
The planning committee essentially is to plan, prosecute, have oversight responsibility in respect of all matters relating to the 60th anniversary celebration of our independence. And as you heard, he's chosen a very able, capable chairperson whom I'm going to deputize, Mr. Ken Amankwa, who has a lot of experience in these matters. And we all trust, the president trusts, that at the end of the day, he is going to lead all of us, the team, the planning committee, in organizing an anniversary that the Ghanaian people are going to be very happy about.
Will you be paid at the end of your service?
I mean, those matters are going to be considered and discussed, but as I see it, we're going to run a very sacrificial duty and service to our country.
Away from the presidency, by law, there are supposed to be a non-partisan institution. The Ghana Police Service over the years has suffered undue political meddling in its performance of professional service, particularly in an election year. So who's to blame for this act, the government or the service itself? Is it a perception or not? Azuma Vincent is a research officer at WANEP, and he joins me in the studio. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Good afternoon. Particularly, he is the research, he's in charge of research, monitoring and evaluation at the West Africa Network for Peace Building. You're welcome on the show.
Thank you very much.
This is public perception about the police service. What do you make of this perception, and from where you sit, do you think there is any genuineness in this kind of suggestion by the public?
First, I must preface my contribution to this subject by saying that the Ghana Police Service has accredited itself as one of the best services in Africa. When they go on any mission, international missions, they come out tops. Having said that, some of the acts of the Ghana Police actually make people perceive them as being partisan. And it is not entirely their fault, because what does the Constitution say? It says the president must appoint the IGP. So right away, once the president has appointed the IGP, it means that people already see that IGP or the policeman as the president's man. And some of the actions by some of our presidents also make people actually believe this perception. Let me give an example of how the just ended election, before the just ended election, a new IGP was appointed. So people started saying that, well, maybe the then president wanted someone to actually run the police service to favor the elections for him. So those things were going on. Just after the elections, now we hear there's a new IGP appointed by the new president for the interim management of the Ghana Police. So people who don't even know that the Constitution says the president must appoint the IGP rightly say that, well, the NDC IGP is gone, now we have the NPP IGP. And the acts of policemen in some cases also actually confirm some of these perceptions. For instance, if there's a government in power and people or maybe supporters of that government are misbehaving clearly on the street or elsewhere, the police are very lethargic in arresting and prosecuting. Look at how long it took the police to jump into action after the elections, and there was seizure of toilets and toll booths and all that. Yeah, so all those things allude to the perception that the police actually play to the political gallery.
So are you suggesting that we should trace this from our constitution, which first of all mandates that the president must appoint an IGP?
Yes, somehow yes. We've been saying that the president is a very powerful person, but it's actually not the president. We can say the presidency is actually very, very powerful, because the presidency then extends to every other officer that the president appoints to work on his behalf. So you can take all the military chiefs, you can take the prisons, you can take all the security heads. They are appointed by the president. And these people are seen as the president's men. So, yeah, partly it comes from our constitution. So the question is, how do we ensure that these men that are appointed, these men and women that are appointed by the president, stay professional and don't do things that are looked at as the president's way of doing things? So where is the professionalism of the police?
But beyond the constitution giving the president the authority or the power to appoint an IGP, the constitution goes on to define what the police is supposed to do. And one of the things it's supposed to do is to protect the individuals, or protect the state from any security threat. Is that what we're doing? I mean, if we're being political, it means we're going contrary to the constitution, because that's not what the constitution says.
I must say the police, to a very large extent, have been professional. But some of the actions are those things that are lead to suspicions and perceptions. Because I'm a police officer, and I've been appointed to the position of a senior police officer. Then I see the IGP during the previous government stepping aside, and the president appointing a new police officer, a new police head. So straight away, what comes to mind is that I must act in favor of the man who appointed me. So psychologically, people in the force will want to work to actually satisfy or maybe make the appointing body happy. And by way of doing that is going perhaps contrary to the laws of the land or the principles and the values of the service. So that's how sometimes we see police officers who are supposed to actually make arrests of certain people, they are not able to do it because of some kind of political persecutions that they fear. It might be true, it might be also just their own perceptions.
So do you see anything wrong with the constitution mandating the president to appoint an IGP, or you feel it should be something that, the person should rise through the ranks and it shouldn't necessarily be an appointment position?
I ask myself, what is wrong if there's a new president and the old IGP stays on as a professional and does his work as a professional? So does it mean that if today there's a new president and we have a new IGP, and in the next 4 years we have a new president, then there's a new IGP, why can't that IGP stay on not as a political appointee, but as a professional who does his job as any other professional?
But as human as we are, that can't happen, because of course, if this is your master, you want to satisfy your master. We're all human and we behave like, sometimes.
Well, for now, because the Constitution makes that possible, that the president can appoint the IGP and all the other security heads. So we should put in place some kind of performance management mechanism that all those heads are held responsible to what they sign up to. So what is what are the requirements of a police IGP? What does he need to do for the service? And what is expected from the police service at the time this man or this woman is appointed? Are we measuring their performance and actually holding them responsible to those mechanisms that we actually set them to do? Do we do that? Most of the time we don't. And that is where we have the problem. So then a police officer can actually do things against the Constitution, against you and I, and get scot-free because of some kind of political leanings.
So what's your recommendation? How do we deal with this canker in the police service?
That's what I'm saying, that once the police service have some work to do, they must be measured. The question should be asked, are they doing what they are supposed to be doing? Are they being professional as they are supposed to be? If they are not, then heads must roll. I don't see why people should be misbehaving. There are some cases of arson where people are clearly seen as people who are actually causing those harms. People attack others on the street. People seize items unlawfully. And police is almost, so to say, impotent. Why should that be? Such police officers should be brought to book and punished so that other officers can learn from those police inactions, and then maybe people will become a lot more professional in their duties.
But we've seen policemen who have been made to go to the backyard just because they wanted to call a spade a spade. Don't you think that this suggestion of trying to be professional in order to hurt your masters is just mere talk than putting in practice? It may be difficult when it's put in practice.
Well, it has worked in other places. Why can't it work in Ghana? Because it only takes one or two police officers or police security agents to actually sacrifice their own bread and butter for the service or the services to actually work professionally. So yes, some people may suffer some kind of political victimization, but then the right thing needs to be done. It might not be today, but it must certainly be tomorrow.
Do you feel that amending that part of the Constitution that says that the president must appoint an IGP should be amended?
I think it will be a right move, but then it must also be done with some circumspection, because looking at the history of Ghana, where we've come from a number of coup d'etats and all that, so we came from a period where once you get hold of the security services, you could then kind of overthrow governments and install a new president unconstitutionally. So that's where we've come from. So it made it very difficult for us to actually think about how do we make these institutions professional instead of political. Yes, a lot of the officers that we see today are striving hard enough to actually become professional police officers or army officers. But I mean, more actions need to be taken to actually ensure that they stay professional and not political.
Do you think that the personnel itself, the police personnel, if we put aside the IGP, the personnel, are we doing due diligence in recruiting such people? Do we recruit the right people into the police service so that we can hold them accountable for professionalism?
Well, that is another aspect of some of the root causes of the unprofessionalism of the police service and the perception that the police is politicized. Because people think that you need to belong to a certain party to gain access to the police service as a young person who actually wants to serve your country. So when one party is in power, it is perceived that they hire people from certain parties or certain regions. And so if another party comes into power, it's also perceived that they hire certain type of people or people who have allegiance to those parties. So if that is the case, it will mean that some of those people that we hire into the service are actually not the right people that we hire, but we only take them because of political expediency. And that will lead to unprofessionalism in the police service. It will lead to police people committing crimes that we are seeing today on our streets and everywhere. And so some of these things must be stopped. The services must ensure that whoever they take on, whoever they actually recruit and train, are people who have the requisite expertise or maybe requirements to actually become policemen or army officers in Ghana.
This looks like it's rooted deeply into our society. I mean, if you look at the hierarchy from IGP to recruitment, there is some political hand in it. It doesn't look to me like something that we'll be able to deal with in a day or two. How long should we expect to suffer this canker?
It's a total cultural shift that we need to actually have, not only in the security services, but across board in every aspect of our economy. But it only takes one person to bring about change. And I don't think it will be too difficult for this government to say, okay, we want to bring about some change. After all, they say change has come, right?
Change is here.
So we must see some change happening in terms of who gets into the service, how are these people hired, are they the right people, do we have the measurement to actually hold police officers and other security services responsible if they go wrong or if they do go contrary to what they are supposed to be doing. So I think this government has a very good opportunity to make some changes, and we are looking forward to have that happen soon.
Well, many thanks to you. Vincent Azuma is a coordinator in charge of research, monitoring and evaluation at ONEP. We'll take a break on the pulse, but still to come, it's been a day of silent protest at the Ghana Post at the headquarters of Ghana, and the staff are demanding the removal of some top officials, and we'll be bringing you details after this break.